I am a Satanist and a neo-pagan as well. There are things about LaVey's brand of Satanism that I agree with, and things that I don't agree with. But I really wish other Satanists would stop getting so fucking hard for Anton LaVey, because largely, LaVey was a charlatan who mixed Crowley's philosophies with Ayn Rand's BS. He was also an idiot who didn't even understand what solipsism was. What he defined as solipsism was actually something called projection. Solipsism is something completely different. The two concepts don't even have anything in common with each other aside from both being things related in some way to the self. Claiming they're the same thing is like saying that solar power and sharks are the same thing because they both need the sun to live. Dictionary.com defines projection in this context as the attribution of one's own attitudes, feelings, or suppositions to others as a naive or unconscious defense against anxiety or guilt. Which is what LaVey wrongly calls solipsism. Meanwhile, solipsism is the theory that only the self exists, or can be proved to exist, and/or extreme preoccupation with and indulgence of one's feelings, desires, etc., egoistic self-absorption. Solipsism can thus lead to projection, but even people who aren't solipsistic are guilty of projection. In fact, projection causes most bigotry in my observations, especially ableism concerning mental illnesses, neurodiversity, and invisible disabilities like chronic pain. But I digress. Getting back on track, because of the influence of Ayn Rand, a person who basically worshipped capitalism, I, an anarcho-communist, can't stand LaVey's brand of Satanism. My own brand of Satanism is not atheistic, though I do pretend otherwise to anger Christians because Christianity is a disease that needs to be wiped out. I also find the notion of neo-paganism as atheistic to be insulting as well. Sure, there are people like that, but there are also people like me who believe gods are real. I myself don't believe they're literal giant humans in the sky, more like powerful spirits, but they exist. They are not mere symbols. But my relationship with them is basically they're useful in magic and that's about it. I don't worship them. I use them as tools. Either way, they get attention. If you don't believe in literal gods or whatever. If you don't bother me, I won't bother you. Some may say, quote, but neo-pagans generally have multiple taboos connected to their use of magic. They are not to use their magic to do harm or control the will of another, lest their attacks be returned to them threefold. Using magic in your own self-interest is looked upon with suspicion, as is taking money for magic. End quote. That is Wicca, and derivative paths. Not all neo-pagans have such restrictions, and it is very ignorant to say otherwise. Anyway, given LaVey's history and influences, I'm not surprised that his brand of Satanism is popular among selfish elitist edgelords, as it is not at all unique and was nowhere near being the first brand of Satanism, modern or otherwise, just the most popular. And LaVey and his heirs are to Satanism as one of those televangelists is to Christianity. LaVey's brand of Satanism is every bit as toxic and victim-blaming as New Age religions are, just with a different flavor. LaVey's Satanism is ableist, racist, and classist as well, as it doesn't take into account that the circumstances of one's birth can all but ensure your place in the world. LaVey was a white, able-bodied male, and while he was born low class, he got himself out of his class status with a mix of his white able-bodied status and a carny's contempt for the masses. LaVey was just as much a con artist as L. Ron Hubbard or many of the New Age gurus or Christian televangelists he proclaimed to have hated. He just tailor-made his philosophy for a different audience. LaVeyan Satanism's premise is that you, and only you, are responsible for your own success in the world. This completely ignores racism, classism, and ableism inherent in our society. It also disregards the economic realities of our society, like the fact that for every one job opening there's like 10 people looking for that job. It ignores the rising cost of living, ignores the slave wages most people are being paid, so that not even holding 2 full-time jobs is enough to do more than barely scrape by. LaVeyan Satanism puts the blame for economic misfortune squarely on the victim's shoulders, the same as New Age and many Christian and neo-pagan faiths do, make no mistake. New Agey religions may tell you you're not thinking the right happy thoughts, and LaVey's path may tell you you're not being assertive enough, but in the end it's all still victim blaming. And I speak from experience, as someone who has tried New Age religions and New Agey neo-pagan faiths and LaVeyan Satanism, and found them all to have the same flaws. This is why I've forged my own path, one that says the world is unfair. Instead of ignoring that fact, recognize it and work to fix it. With that in mind, I find the tenets of the Satanic Temple to be closest to my own. I've heard some bullshit lately about them being involved with fascists, and you'd think that would make me be against them because I hate fascists, but from what I've been able to dig up, their only link to fascism is they happen to use a lawyer who takes on a lot of controversial cases including fascists. Which to my perspective doesn't mean they condone fascism, it just means there's a limited number of lawyers in the US willing to fight for what Satanists want to fight for due to the controversy behind Satanism with the idiot crowds like Christians. It's not condoning fascism, it's a beggars can't be choosers situation, and I think the only way to really solve the problem of lawyering up without getting one that doesn't take on problematic cases is if some of the TST members go into law school and become their own lawyers. And you know what they say about people who act as their own lawyers. I have a lot of other issues with LaVey, but I don't currently have the desire to write out a 60-minute long video explaining everything that sucks about him and the pathetic edgelords that like him. I'll just finish up by asking if people can just stop sucking the ghost of his dick so damned hard.